Hi everyone, Toothany Stacks Tano here, the internet's busiest music nerd, and it's time for a review of the new Drake album / mixtape. If you're reading this, it's too late. Drake is a Toronto rapper, singer, whose career was put on the fast track in the late 2000s by Lil Wayne through a co-sign, getting signed to Young Money, Cash Money Records, and he has dropped 3 successful albums since and has impacted the music industry more than any other rapper his age, I think, with loads of hot singles under his belt like 0 to 100 and Best I Ever Had, Marvin's Room, Headlines, The Motto, Hold On, We're Going Home, Started from the Bottom, Now We're Here. But despite Drake's incredible success and his influence on modern-day hip-hop with his blends of pop rap and R&B, he's continued to be a pretty polarizing figure. For some, he represents an ideological shift, a generational shift in hip-hop music, one that's less macho, more in tune with its emotions, which has been fuel for many an internet joke. And personally, I can't really say Drake has been a favorite of mine over the past 5 or so years either. On every Drake LP, there have been some singles that I've gravitated toward a little bit, at least. But with Thank Me Later, I was kind of turned off by all the sappy love songs on this record. Some of the lower moments on Take Care, like Marvin's Room, in my opinion, were kind of immature and trashy, even though that record, in a sense, is pretty interesting in that it is so kind of moody and ethereal for the genre. And theoretically, Nothing Was the Same was a kind of interesting change of pace in that this LP was even more ethereal and even less single-driven. There are tracks on this record that managed to be big hits and very popular despite not being as immediate, in my opinion, as previous singles like Headlines. But still, Nothing Was the Same did contain some of my least favorite Drake songs so far, like Wu-Tang Forever and Worst Behavior. Not only did this LP lack pop appeal, but it also lacked real confidence, which I think on a lot of the songs here, Drake was overcompensating for. Again, do bring it back to Worst Behavior, which features a vocal inflection that's just ridiculous, kind of like Drake is trying to make a big boy voice. But now we have this suddenly dropped new mixtape / album, which comes in the midst of drama, heavy drama, involving Young Money, Cash Money, Billionaire's label mate, Lil Wayne. From what the music media has reported thus far, Lil Wayne has not been able to release his new full-length project, his commercial project, The Carter 5, and Lil Wayne, of course, is pissed, is trying to leave the label, is trying to sue the label, and some music websites have been reporting that this new project here fulfills a 4-album record contract that Drake has with Young Money, Cash Money. However, some journalists have responded by saying, well, actually, we're not really totally sure whether or not that's true. Where is this information coming from? What's the source on this information? So I'm not really sure. I mean, this album here could either be an appetizer for the LP that Drake is scheduled to release later this year, or maybe it's Drake showing solidarity with Wayne and trying to break away from the label if in fact he has finished his record contract out with this project. We'll sort of see whether or not that obligation has been filled when Drake goes to release his new album later this year. So in a way, this new project over here is kind of like a placeholder, and some people have kind of theorized that this may in fact be a bunch of B-sides or just unused recordings. And even if that is the case, I don't think there is a lack of effort reflected in that. And actually, I mean, a lot of what's here seems pretty new, like Drake is reacting to some pretty current events on a few of these tracks. And sonically, aesthetically, all the songs here are pretty cohesive, almost as if they were recorded and conceived within a very recent time period. If this were a bunch of B-sides, we would be getting tracks that sound like Thank Me Later Drake. We'd be getting tracks that sound like Take Care Drake. We'd be getting tracks that sound like Nothing Was the Same Drake, and maybe even Mixtape Drake from 2009. But really, I just don't think that's the case, especially considering just how well a lot of these songs flow together. As far as the material that's presented here, we're essentially getting 17 tracks. Lyrically, Drake isn't really approaching any topics here he hasn't before. He's famous. He's a rapper. He's successful. He's rich. Sometimes he's in love. Sometimes he's reflecting back upon his family and his youth. And there are some memorable lines on these tracks too. Drake drops some gems. There's one line where he's rapping about throwing rappers' heads up on his mantle as if he's a hunter. There's another line here that I liked where he's saying that he has to act like he likes some of these rappers, but his acting days are over, so screw that. And Drake's acting days are usually something that has haunted him and has been kind of used against him in a negative way. And I think this was an interesting bar to kind of flip that around, fire back, and reverse that weapon on his critics. There's one line where he's talking about all these things that he's buying and buying and buying, and then he ends the series of material things off with, and you better keep track of it, everything I'm buying. The new shit's on steroids, it'll never pass a physical, really a drug test, but physical, okay. The other line about someone picking their casket and he'll put a nail through it. There are a lot of lines here where I'm like, oh, okay, Drake's sounding aggressive, he's sounding charismatic, he's sounding like, he's really going for it, he's hungry, he's intense. And there are a lot of tracks here where Drake sort of seems to center on a certain idea, like on energy with haters and people sort of bugging him, draining him of his energy, and he's not gonna let that happen. I would actually say it's a pretty awesome anti-hater anthem. The opening track here, Legend, the idea behind it is pretty simple. If Drake were to die now, he would become legend. Maybe. You and the Six, Drake is getting kind of nostalgic, and he's kind of rapping directly to his mom on this track, and it's pretty heartfelt. On the song Madonna, I think he's, seeing potential in this girl, telling her to get in his car, kind of hitting on her, but in a way, I'm not really sure if that potential is really there, and he's just kind of filling her head with nonsense to, get in her pants, not sure. There's the song Company, where Drake is rapping about how he's a dog and kind of unworthy of a real loving relationship. And the song Used To as well, which you might kind of be familiar with if you heard the mixtape Lil Wayne dropped earlier this year. Drake is essentially talking about getting used to the fame on this track. How long has he been famous at this point? He's still getting used to it. But that's kind of been a consistent thing for Drake. Even at his highest points in music, there's always just like a little bit of awkwardness that you could read into on some of the deeper cuts of his albums. Just kind of the sense that he's not where he belongs, or he's just not comfortable in his own skin. And that's been kind of a turnoff for me on past projects. Like, if you're gonna be that insecure, just be open about it and just own it and just make music about it, rather than swinging back and forth violently between just TMI, exposing a little bit too much, and then sort of overcompensating for it. I think on If You're Reading This, Drake finally finds that happy medium that he used to kind of be at in his older mixtape days. To finish off the record topically, the song Star 67 has some pretty smartphone metaphors, and the last track here, which the internet has been in an uproar over, Drake throws an incredible amount of shade at Tyga. Really clever line about him not acting his age, but his girl's age. Rappers just really want to marry into that Kardashian royalty, don't they? But what's most important on this LP is not what Drake did or what Drake said, but really what he didn't do, what he didn't say. He didn't make me cringe anywhere on this entire record. There is nowhere on this album where he is desperately drunk dialing someone and being like, hey, I was with you first. There aren't any moments where he's too afraid to get out of the car to pump gas. Instead, Drake oozes with actual confidence, which on this LP, I think is pretty contagious, in the same way that it would be on a 2000s era Jay-Z record. But also Drake is a little more self-aware in that he'll kind of check himself and maybe say something poignant every once in a while about himself, his position, rap music as an industry, or other rappers. And I get that some people aren't really going to be interested in that topic. Drake is not going backpack or political or super deep or anything like that, but his very high-profile position in the music industry makes his autobiographical rhymes worth delivering. So Drake's confidence is convincing on this project, but he brings some good hooks and melodies as well, like on the song Energy, or Know Yourself, running through the six with my woes, or even Preach with Party Next Door, or Used To, which has a quick little funny cool, catchy, repetitive hook, or the song 6 Man, and most of these songs have some pretty aggressive flows too, maybe just aggressive by Drake standards, but aggressive all the same. Drake has a certain approach to aggression. He's not super angry, super mad, or anything like that. I would say his aggression is more fact-based. Let's talk numbers. Who's bigger? Who's better? Who's got more of everything? If you want to view the world that way, that's okay. I guess what makes it charismatic to me on this record is that Drake's consistent confidence has him filling out these big boy braggadocious shoes. Now, sonically, this record actually reminds me quite a bit of Nothing Was the Same, but with some actual aggression and bite. And I would actually say this project has more guts to it, even if it doesn't see as much success as Nothing Was the Same. Formulaically, most of the tracks on this project actually remind me of a 0 to 100. Atmospheric, skeletal instrumental, confident delivery, and beat change up toward the end of the track where Drake might be doing a little bit of singing, or maybe some more melody is introduced in the instrumental, and maybe kind of dark and nocturnal too. Like I said, most of the songs here run with that formula. And even tracks with more bustling, aggressive beats and flows like Six God, for example. Even this track, with its very simple, kind of plain sounds, actually fit into the minimal aesthetic of the album overall. And I think these songs actually see a lot of success and quality because of this 0 to 100 formula, especially the songs that have the most epic and huge emotional change-ups toward the end, like the song Company with Travis Scott. And even the two Party Next Door tracks on here kind of feel like one long, cohesive song. The songs I'm turned off by the most are the ones that follow this formula to the point where they don't actually do a change-up toward the end and instead kind of stagnate and sound a little repetitive by the time they finish. Songs like Legend, which I wish varied up a little bit more, or maybe was just kind of shortened, or Madonna, or Jungle, or Now and Forever. But even though these songs are low points to me, I wouldn't say they're necessarily horrible. They're not songs I'm scrambling to skip once they come on. I actually like a bulk of this album. Even if this record doesn't go down as one of Drake's biggest projects historically, I think it is my favorite commercial project that he's dropped so far. If you're looking for some simple, straightforward, low-key, but very catchy pop rap with a lot of confidence and a lot of brags, then I would check this record out. There are also some creative references to some pretty important influences to Drake on this LP, like Genuine, as well as The Roots and Erykah Badu on one particular track here. And I really think on this project, Drake has his usual emotional baggage kind of in order, to the point where he isn't losing control over it. It's not impeding upon the enjoyment of the album. And hopefully he continues to keep it this well organized as we continue on to his next full-length album later this year. I'm feeling a strong 7 to a light 8 on this.
No way!
Yeah. I know. Musician, if you've given this album a listen, what did you think of it? Did you love it? Did you hate it? Why? What do you think I should review next? And that's about it. Anthony Fantano, Drake, if you're reading this is too late, forever.